The sun was setting over the small town of Millbrook, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. November had brought the cold with it, and the streets were nearly empty as people hurried home to their warm houses. The old courthouse stood silent in the town square, its stone steps covered with fallen leaves that rustled in the wind. That's when Jake, Thunder Morrison, roared into town on his Harley-Davidson. The sound of the engine echoed off the empty buildings, a deep rumble that announced his arrival. Jake was a big man, standing well over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders that seemed even wider in his black leather jacket. The jacket was covered in patches from 15 years of riding with the Devil's Ridge Motorcycle Club. His thick beard was streaked with gray, and his arms were covered in tattoos that told stories of a life lived on the road. People in Millbrook knew Jake by reputation, even if they didn't know him personally. When he rode through town, mothers pulled their children closer. Store owners watched him carefully through their windows. He was used to it by now. After 15 years of wearing the leather vest and riding with his brothers in the club, he'd learned that people made up their minds about him before he ever said a word. Jake wasn't heading anywhere in particular that evening. He'd finished a long ride from the next county over and was just passing through on his way home. He'd planned to grab some coffee and keep moving. But as he slowed down near the courthouse, something caught his eye. There, on the cold stone steps, sat a small figure. At first, Jake thought maybe it was a pile of clothes someone had left behind. But then the pile moved, and he realized it was a child. A little girl, probably no more than 6 or 7 years old, sitting all alone as the temperature dropped and darkness began to fall. Jake's first instinct was to keep riding. Getting involved could mean trouble, especially looking the way he did. People didn't trust men like him around children, and he knew it. But something made him pull the bike over to the curb. Maybe it was the way the little girl was hunched over, her small body shaking. Or maybe it was the fact that in the 20 minutes he'd been riding through town, he hadn't seen a single other person stop. He killed the engine, and the sudden silence felt loud. The little girl looked up at the sound of his boots on the pavement, and Jake saw her face for the first time. She'd been crying. Her cheeks were red and wet with tears, and her nose was running from the cold. She wore a thin pink jacket that wasn't nearly warm enough for November weather, and she was clutching a teddy bear that had seen better days. When she saw Jake walking toward her, her eyes went wide. He knew what he must look like to her. A giant of a man, all leather and chains and tattoos, walking out of the growing darkness. She pulled her teddy bear closer and seemed to shrink into herself. Jake stopped about 10 feet away. He didn't want to scare her more than she already was. He slowly lowered himself down, taking a knee on the cold sidewalk so he wouldn't be towering over her. Even kneeling, he was still bigger than most men standing up. "Hey there, little one," he said, keeping his voice as gentle as he could. It came out rough anyway, like gravel from years of shouting over motorcycle engines and too many cigarettes in his younger days. "You okay?" The girl didn't answer. She just stared at him with those big, frightened eyes. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jake continued, staying right where he was. "I just want to help." "Are you lost?" At the word lost, the girl's bottom lip started to tremble, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She nodded, unable to speak. It's okay, Jake said softly. "We're going to find your family. I promise. Can you tell me your name?" "Lily," the girl whispered, so quietly Jake almost didn't hear her. "That's a real pretty name," Jake said, offering a small smile. "I'm Jake. Now, Lily, where's your mom or dad?" "I live with my grandma," Lily said, her voice shaking. "We were at the market and I saw a puppy and I followed it, and when I turned around, Grandma was gone. I've been looking everywhere, but I can't find her." Jake's heart sank. The farmer's market on Saturday afternoons. It had ended hours ago. This little girl had been out here, alone and scared, for who knows how long, and people had walked by. He knew they had. This was Main Street. People had seen her and kept walking. "How long have you been sitting here, Lily?" She shrugged. "I don't know. A long time. It was still light when I sat down. That meant at least an hour, maybe more." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, not at Lily, but at every person who had seen a crying child on courthouse steps and decided it wasn't their problem, okay? Listen, Jake said, pulling out his cell phone. I'm going to call the police, and they're going to help us find your grandma. She's probably looking everywhere for you right now. But first, are you cold? Lily nodded again, and Jake could see her shivering, even though she was trying to hide it. Without thinking twice, Jake shrugged off his leather jacket. Underneath, he wore a simple black t-shirt that did nothing against the November chill, but he didn't care. He walked slowly toward Lily, moving carefully so he wouldn't startle her, and draped the jacket over her small shoulders. It swallowed her completely, hanging down past her knees, but it was warm from his body heat. There, he said. That's better, right? For the first time, Lily gave him a tiny smile. It's really big, she said. Yeah, well, I'm a really big guy, Jake said with a chuckle. Now, you stay right there with Mr. Bear, and I'm going to make a phone call. He dialed 911 and explained the situation to the dispatcher. They said officers were on the way and asked him to stay with the child. As he hung up, he looked at Lily, still shivering despite the jacket, and made a decision. Hey, Lily, are you hungry? She nodded. There's a diner just down the street. I can see it from here. How about we walk down there where it's warm, and I'll get you some hot chocolate while we wait for the police. They can meet us there. Lily looked uncertain, and Jake didn't blame her. She'd probably been taught, like all kids, not to go anywhere with strangers. But she was also cold and scared and had been alone too long. Tell you what, Jake said. You don't have to walk with me. I'll walk on the sidewalk, and you can walk on the grass right next to it. That way you'll have space. Okay? And the diner is right there. You can see it. Lots of windows, lots of people inside. Safe. Lily thought about it for a moment, then stood up, still wrapped in Jake's enormous jacket. Okay, she said quietly. They made their way down the street. Jake on the sidewalk keeping his distance, Lily on the grass holding her teddy bear tight. As they walked, Jake kept talking in that same gentle voice, asking Lily about her teddy bear, about school, about anything that might keep her mind off being scared. Slowly, she started to answer more. By the time they reached the diner, she had even told him that the bear's name was Captain Fuzzy, and that she'd had him since she was a baby. Jake held the diner door open and let Lily walk in first. The warm air hit them immediately, along with the smell of coffee and French fries. Several people looked up, and Jake saw the familiar expressions. The stares. The judgment. But he didn't care. He had one job right now, and that was making sure this little girl was safe and warm until her family could be found. What Jake didn't know was that this moment, this simple choice to stop and help, would change not just his life, but the entire town of Millbrook forever. The diner was busy for a Saturday evening. Families sat in booths eating burgers and fries, and the sound of conversations mixed with the clinking of plates and silverware. When Jake walked in with little Lily, the noise didn't stop exactly, but it changed. Conversations got quieter. People turned to look. Jake was used to this. What he wasn't used to was having a 6-year-old girl walking beside him, swimming in his leather jacket that dragged on the floor behind her. The owner of the diner, Mrs. Chen, stood behind the counter. She was a small woman in her 60s who had run this place for 30 years. She'd seen everything, or so she thought. But the sight of Jake Morrison with a small child made her eyebrows go up. Her hand moved slowly toward the phone behind the counter. Jake saw it. He always noticed when people were nervous around him. Ma'am, he called out, his voice respectful. This little girl got separated from her grandmother. I found her on the courthouse steps. I've already called the police and they're on their way. I just brought her here to get warm and get something to drink while we wait. Would that be all right? Mrs. Chen studied him for a long moment. She looked at Lily, who was shivering and holding that worn teddy bear. Then she looked back at Jake, standing there in just his t-shirt in November cold, goosebumps visible on his tattooed arms. Sit wherever you like, Mrs. Chen said finally, though her voice was cautious. I'll bring some hot chocolate. Jake gestured to a booth near the window, where they could see the police car when it arrived. He let Lily slide in first, and he sat across from her. The booth was small, and Jake's knees hit the underside of the table. He shifted uncomfortably, very aware that every person in the diner was watching them. "You doing okay, Lily?" he asked quietly. She nodded, but her eyes were red from crying, and she looked exhausted. Mrs. Chen arrived with 2 mugs of hot chocolate, each topped with a generous pile of whipped cream. She set one in front of Lily and one in front of Jake. Then, to his surprise, she brought over a basket of fresh dinner rolls and butter. "On the house," she said. "The little one looks hungry." "Thank you, ma'am," Jake said. "That's real kind of you." Mrs. Chen nodded and walked away, but Jake noticed she picked up the phone behind the counter. He hoped she was calling the police too to confirm his story. He didn't blame her for being careful. Lily picked up her mug with both hands and took a small sip. The hot chocolate left a whipped cream mustache on her upper lip, and despite everything, she giggled a little. Jake smiled. "Good stuff, huh?" "Hung," Lily said. "Grandma makes hot chocolate too, but she doesn't put this much whipped cream on it." "Well, that's the secret," Jake said. "The more whipped cream, the better the hot chocolate. That's just science." Lily giggled again, and Jake felt something in his chest relax. If she could laugh, even a little, maybe she'd be okay.
"Your grandma?"
Jake said gently. "What's her name?" "Rosa," Lily said. "Rosa Martinez. She's probably really worried." "I bet she is," Jake agreed. "But the police are really good at finding people. They'll help us track her down, and you'll be back with her before you know it." They sat in silence for a moment, while Lily drank her hot chocolate and nibbled on a dinner roll. Jake kept glancing out the window, watching for police cars. The minutes felt like hours. Then the diner door burst open. An older woman rushed in, her gray hair wild, her face streaked with tears. 2 police officers were right behind her. The woman's eyes scanned the diner frantically. And when they landed on Lily, she let out a cry that came from somewhere deep in her soul. "Lily. Oh my God, Lily. Grandma!" Lily scrambled out of the booth, and the little girl and her grandmother collided in the middle of the diner. Rosa Martinez dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around her granddaughter, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Lily was crying too, her face buried in her grandmother's shoulder. Everyone in the diner had stopped eating. Some people had tears in their eyes just watching the reunion. The 2 police officers stood back, letting them have their moment. One of them, a younger officer named Rodriguez, walked over to Jake's booth. Jake stood up immediately, which made him tower over the officer. "You the one who called it in?" Rodriguez asked. "Yes, sir," Jake said. "Found her on the courthouse steps. She said she got separated from her grandmother at the market." "That matches what Mrs. Martinez told us," Rodriguez said. He pulled out a notepad. "I'm going to need to ask you some questions," of course, Jake said. He'd expected this. He answered every question clearly and honestly. Where exactly he found Lily. What time it was. What she told him. Why he brought her to the diner. The officer wrote it all down, his expression neutral. Meanwhile, Rosa Martinez was holding Lily like she might disappear if she'd let go. She was checking her over, touching her face, her arms, making sure she wasn't hurt. Then her eyes landed on the massive leather jacket Lily was still wearing. Rosa looked up and saw Jake for the first time. She stood slowly, still holding Lily's hand tight, and walked over to the booth. Jake braced himself. He knew how this must look. A guy like him with someone's granddaughter. Rosa Martinez looked up at him. She was barely 5 feet tall, and Jake was 6'4". She had to crane her neck to see his face. Then she did something Jake never expected. She started crying again and threw her arms around him. Jake froze. He didn't know what to do. His arms hung awkwardly at his sides, while this small woman hugged him and sobbed into his chest. Around them, the diner was completely silent. "Thank you," Rosa said, her voice muffled against his shirt. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. I thought I'd lost her. I thought something terrible had happened. I'd been searching everywhere, and the police were helping, but I was so scared. Thank you for keeping her safe." Jake's throat felt tight. Very carefully, he put his arms around Rosa and patted her back gently, the way he'd seen people do when they were trying to comfort someone. "She's a good kid," he said quietly. "Real brave. She did everything right." Rosa pulled back and wiped her eyes. She looked at Jake's arms covered in goosebumps. You gave her your jacket. She was cold, Jake said simply. Officer Rodriguez had been watching the whole thing. He closed his notepad and shared a look with his partner. The other officer, an older man named Phillips, nodded slightly. "All right, Mr. Morrison," Rodriguez said. "You're free to go, and thank you for doing the right thing." But Rosa wasn't done. She grabbed Jake's hand with both of hers. Her hands were small and rough from years of hard work, and they trembled as she held his. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jake Morrison, ma'am?" "Jake," she repeated. "I don't know how to thank you. You could have kept riding. Most people did. I know they did because Lily told me she was sitting there a long time. But you stopped. You helped her." Jake felt uncomfortable with all the attention. The entire diner was watching this scene unfold. He could see the looks on people's faces changing. The surprise and confusion as they tried to square what they were seeing with what they thought they knew about men who looked like him. Anyone would have done the same. Jake said, "But they didn't," Rosa said firmly. "You did." Lily tugged on her grandmother's sleeve. "Grandma, he bought me hot chocolate. And he told me Captain Fuzzy was a good name for a teddy bear. And he was really nice." Rosa looked at her granddaughter, then back at Jake. Something shifted in her expression, a decision being made. "Where do you live, Jake?" she asked. "About 10 miles outside of town," he said. "Over near the old mill?" "I'm going to cook dinner for you," Rosa said. It wasn't a question. "Tomorrow night, you come to our house, and I'll make you a proper meal. It's the least I can do." Jake opened his mouth to refuse. This was where it should end. He'd done his good deed, the kid was safe, and now he should fade back into his normal life. Getting more involved would only lead to complications. But then he looked at Lily, who was watching him with those big eyes, still holding Captain Fuzzy tight. "Are you going to come?" Lily asked. "Please." And somehow, without quite knowing how it happened, Jake found himself saying yes. Jake spent most of Sunday wondering if he should actually show up for dinner. He stood in his small house, outside of town, staring at his closet like it might have answers. Everything he owned was black or dark blue. Band t-shirts, plain shirts, his leather jacket. Nothing that said appropriate dinner guest at a grandmother's house. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Rosa. She'd gotten his number from the police report, which felt a bit invasive. But the message was simple and kind. "Dinner at 6. We live at 247 Oak Street. Lily is excited to see you again." That last part got him. A 6-year-old kid was excited to see him? When was the last time anyone under the age of 20 looked at him with anything other than fear? Jake settled on his cleanest black t-shirt and jeans. He stopped at the grocery store on the way into town and stood in the flower section feeling completely out of place. A young couple stared at him as he awkwardly picked up different bouquets and tried to figure out which one was appropriate. Finally, he grabbed a simple arrangement of yellow flowers. The cashier, a teenage girl, rang him up without making eye contact. Oak Street was in the older part of Millbrook, where the houses were small but well kept. Number 247 was a tiny blue house with white shutters and a small porch. There were flower pots everywhere, even though most of the plants had died back for winter. A small bike with training wheels sat on the porch. Jake killed his motorcycle engine, and suddenly the quiet felt very loud. He could hear kids playing somewhere down the street. A dog barked. Normal neighborhood sounds. He felt like an invader from another world before he could second-guess himself again. The front door flew open, and Lily came running out. "You came. You came." She was wearing overalls and had her hair in pigtails. Captain Fuzzy was tucked under one arm. "Grandma said you might not come, but I knew you would." "Course I came," Jake said, climbing off his bike. "I said I would, didn't I?" Rosa appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on an apron. She smiled when she saw him. "Jake, welcome. Come in, come in." Jake grabbed the flowers and walked up to the porch. He had to duck slightly to get through the doorway. Inside, the house smelled incredible. Something with garlic and spices that made his stomach rumble. The living room was small and crowded with furniture, but everything was spotlessly clean. Photos covered every surface. Most of them were of Lily at different ages. "These are for you," Jake said, holding out the flowers. He felt like a teenager on a first date, awkward and uncertain. "Oh, they're beautiful," Rosa said, taking them. "You didn't have to do that. Lily, can you get the blue vase from under the sink?" Lily scampered off, and Rosa gestured for Jake to sit on the couch. He sat carefully, worried his weight might break something. The couch was old, and the springs creaked. "I hope you're hungry," Rosa said. "I made enough food for an army." "Smells amazing," Jake said honestly. Lily returned with the vase. Rosa went to fill it with water and arrange the flowers. Lily climbed onto the couch next to Jake. Sitting so close, she was almost on his lap. She showed him Captain Fuzzy. "See, he's all clean now. Grandma washed him. He looks real good," Jake said. "Very professional. Do you have any pets?" Lily asked. "Nope, I'm not home enough to take care of anything." "We don't have any either," Lily said. "But I really want a puppy. That's why I followed that puppy at the market. He was so fluffy and cute." Jake could see Rosa listening from the kitchen, her shoulders tensing slightly at the mention of the market, the reminder of how close they'd come to tragedy. "Maybe you'll get one someday," Jake said. "But you gotta promise me something. Promise you'll never wander off like that again. Your grandma loves you a whole lot, and when you went missing, it scared her real bad." Lily nodded seriously. "I know. I'm sorry I did that. I didn't mean to get lost." "I know you didn't," Jake said. "But sometimes sorry isn't enough. You gotta be more careful, okay? The world's got good people in it, but it's got bad people too. You were lucky I found you and not someone else." "Were you scared?" Lily asked. "When you saw me?" Jake thought about it. "Yeah, actually. I was scared for you. Scared you'd been out there too long? Scared you were hurt? And I was a little scared you'd be afraid of me." "Why would I be afraid of you?" "Well," Jake said, "I look kind of scary, don't I? Big guy, tattoos, motorcycle. Most kids run away from me." Lily studied him carefully. "You're not scary. You're nice. And your tattoos are cool? What's that one?" She pointed to an eagle on his forearm. For the next 10 minutes, Jake found himself explaining his tattoos to a fascinated 6-year-old. Which ones meant something, which ones he got just because he liked them. He left out the ones with darker meanings, the ones from harder times in his life. Rosa called them to dinner, and Jake's jaw nearly dropped when he saw the table. She hadn't been kidding about cooking enough for an army. There was roasted chicken, rice and beans, fresh tortillas, 3 different salsas, a salad, and what looked like homemade flan for dessert. "Mrs. Martinez." "This is too much," Jake said. "Rosa," she corrected. "Please call me Rosa, and it's not too much. You kept my granddaughter safe. I could cook for you every day for a year, and it wouldn't be enough to thank you." They sat down to eat, Lily chattering away about school and her friends. Jake learned that Rosa worked 2 jobs, one at a nursing home during the day and another cleaning offices at night. She'd been raising Lily for 2 years, ever since her daughter had died. "Car accident," Rosa said quietly when Lily had gone to the bathroom. "Drunk driver hit her head-on. She was coming home from work. Lily was at home with me that night. Thank God for that, at least." "I'm sorry," Jake said. "That's rough." "Lily's father wasn't in the picture even before that," Rosa continued. "So it's just us now. She's my whole world. When I couldn't find her yesterday, I thought I'd lost everything. Twice in one lifetime seemed too cruel." Jake didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't good with emotions, never had been. But he understood loss. He understood what it meant to hold on to the one good thing in your life with both hands. "She's a great kid," he said finally. "You're doing a real good job with her." Rosa's eyes got shiny with tears, but she smiled. "Thank you. That means more than you know. It's hard sometimes, you know. Working 2 jobs, trying to give her everything she needs. I worry I'm not enough." "You're more than enough," Jake said firmly. "She's happy. She's loved. That's what matters." Lily bounced back into the room, and the heavy moment passed. They finished dinner, and Jake ate more than he'd eaten in months. Everything was delicious. Rosa sent him home with enough leftovers to feed him for 3 days. Packed in plastic containers, she insisted he didn't need to return. As Jake was getting ready to leave, Lily hugged his leg tight. "Will you come visit again?" she asked, looking up at him. Jake looked at Rosa, who smiled and nodded. You're welcome any time, Jake. Really? Yeah, Jake heard himself say. Yeah, I'll come back. And he did. The next Sunday, Rosa texted and invited him for lunch. Then the Sunday after that? Somewhere around the fourth visit, Jake stopped feeling like a guest and started feeling like part of something. Part of a family. He helped fix Rosa's leaky sink. He showed Lily how to patch a tire on her bike. He sat at their kitchen table and told stories about his motorcycle trips while Lily listened with wide eyes and Rosa laughed at the funny parts. People in town started seeing Jake at the grocery store with Rosa and Lily, at the park pushing Lily on the swings, at the ice cream shop buying her a cone with sprinkles. The stares continued, but they were different now, confused, curious. Some people started nodding at him instead of crossing the street. Jake's brothers in the Devil's Ridge Club noticed the change too. They gave him grief about going soft, but it was good-natured. And when Jake mentioned that Lily's birthday was coming up in December, one of them had an idea. Bring her by the clubhouse, his friend Deck said. We'll throw her a party she'll never forget. Jake laughed. Yeah, right. Rosa would never go for that. But when he mentioned it to Rosa, nervously expecting her to say no, she surprised him. If you think it would be safe, she said slowly, and if Lily would enjoy it, then okay. Jake stared at her. Really? You've shown me who you really are, Jake, Rosa said. And if your friends are anything like you, then I trust them too. That's how, 2 weeks later, Jake found himself planning a birthday party for a 7-year-old girl at a motorcycle club. And that's when everything in Millbrook really started to change. The morning of Lily's 7th birthday arrived cold and clear. Jake had been up since 5 in the morning, which was unusual for him on a Saturday. He'd spent the last 2 weeks convincing his brothers in the Devil's Ridge Club that this was a good idea. And now he was second-guessing everything. The clubhouse was a large building on the edge of town. Surrounded by motorcycles, and usually smelling like beer and motor oil, today it smelled like cleaning products. Jake and 5 of his brothers had spent the previous evening scrubbing floors, wiping down tables, and hiding anything that wasn't appropriate for a 7-year-old's eyes. Dex arrived at 6 with boxes of decorations. He was a huge man, even bigger than Jake, with a bald head and a beard that reached his chest. He'd been riding with the club for 20 years and had 3 daughters of his own. I can't believe we're doing this, Dex said, but he was grinning. My girls helped me pick out this stuff. They spent the next hour hanging streamers and balloons, pink and purple everywhere because Lily had told Jake those were her favorite colors. Another club member, a guy they called Tiny, despite being 6'5", showed up with a cake from the best bakery in the county. It was decorated with flowers and butterflies, and it said Happy Birthday, Lily, in perfect frosting letters. Cost me a fortune, Tiny grumbled. This better be worth it. It will be, Jake said. Hoping he was right, by noon everything was ready. The clubhouse looked nothing like its usual self. 10 members of the Devil's Ridge Motorcycle Club stood around looking at the decorations. All of them wearing their leather vests, but also clean shirts underneath. They'd all showered and trimmed their beards. They looked like rough men trying very hard to be on their best behavior. Remember, Jake said, addressing them all? No cursing. No smoking inside. No inappropriate stories. We're doing this for a little kid who deserves a good birthday. Got it, Jake, Dex said. We're not animals. Well, most of us aren't. That got some laughs, breaking the nervous tension. Rosa's car pulled up at 12:30. Jake walked outside to meet them, his heart pounding harder than it did before any motorcycle ride. What if this was too much? What if it scared Lily? What if Rosa took one look at 10 bikers and grabbed her granddaughter and ran? But when Lily got out of the car and saw the motorcycles lined up outside the clubhouse, her face lit up like Christmas morning. Oh my gosh. Look at them all. She grabbed Rosa's hand. Can I see them up close? Rosa looked at Jake, uncertainty in her eyes. He gave her what he hoped was a reassuring smile. It's okay, he said quietly. I promise. They walked toward the clubhouse together, Lily practically bouncing with excitement. When they got to the door, Jake pushed it open, and all 10 bikers shouted surprise. Lily stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes wide. For one horrible second, Jake thought they'd made a mistake. But then Lily started jumping up and down, squealing with delight. "This is all for me?" "All for you, birthday girl," Jake said. The next 2 hours were unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. These men, these tough guys, who'd been in bar fights and run-ins with the law, who looked like they could tear a phone book in half, were playing musical chairs with a 7-year-old. They were making balloon animals, though most of them looked more like weird blobs than animals. They were letting Lily show them how to play her favorite games. Tiny had been the most skeptical about the whole thing. Ended up sitting on the floor having a tea party with Lily and her teddy bear. He held a tiny plastic cup with his massive scarred hands and pretended to sip tea while Lily explained the proper way to have a tea party. "You have to hold your pinky out," Lily instructed seriously. "Like this." Tiny held his pinky out, looking absolutely ridiculous. And Jake had to turn away to hide his laughter. But the best part came when Dex suggested they take Lily for rides on the motorcycles. Rosa hesitated, but Lily was already tugging on Jake's sleeve. "Please, please, please. I've wanted to ride a motorcycle forever." Jake looked at Rosa. "I've got an extra helmet that'll fit her. I'll go slow." "Just around the parking lot." Rosa bit her lip, then nodded. "Okay, but slow." "Slow as a turtle," Jake promised. They found a helmet that worked, though it was still a bit big on Lily's head. Jake helped her climb onto his bike, making sure she was secure. Her little arms wrapped around his waist, and he could feel her practically vibrating with excitement. "You ready?" he asked. "Ready." Jake started the engine, keeping it low and quiet. He pulled out slowly, keeping his promise to Rosa. They rode in circles around the parking lot, Lily laughing the entire time. When he brought her back, she was beaming. "That was amazing. Can I go again?" Other members of the club lined up to give her rides too, each one as careful as Jake had been. Dex took her, then Tiny, then a few others. Rosa watched every moment. But Jake could see her relaxing as she realized how careful they were being with her granddaughter. Between rides, they sang happy birthday and cut the cake. Lily opened presents. The club members had actually bought her gifts. Dex gave her a pink bicycle helmet decorated with stars. Tiny got her a stuffed puppy, since she'd mentioned wanting a real dog. Another member gave her a kid's book about motorcycles. Jake's gift was a leather jacket, child-sized, their name embroidered on the back. Lily put it on immediately and refused to take it off. Other people had started to notice what was happening. The park was across the street from the clubhouse, and families there could see the party. Some of them wandered over, curious. At first, Jake tensed up, worried about what they might think or say. But the parents just watched, surprised looks on their faces. One mother with 2 kids around Lily's age approached Rosa carefully. "Is this a birthday party?" she asked.
Yes.
"Yes," Rosa said. "For my granddaughter?" The woman looked at the bikers, then at Lily zooming around the parking lot on the back of Dex's motorcycle, laughing her head off. Her own kids were watching with envious eyes. "Would it be okay if my kids joined?" the woman asked hesitantly. "They're fascinated by the motorcycles." Rosa looked at Jake. He shrugged. "Sure," Rosa said. "Why not?" Within 30 minutes, 5 more kids had joined the party. The club members adapted, giving more rides, sharing cake, playing games with kids they'd never met. The parents stood together, watching these big, scary-looking men being incredibly gentle with their children. A woman named Helen, who lived near the park, pulled out her phone and took a picture. It was of Jake adjusting Lily's helmet before another ride, both of them smiling. Lily's small hand was resting on Jake's arm, trusting and comfortable. Helen posted the photo on social media that night with a caption, "Today, I saw something beautiful." A local motorcycle club threw a birthday party for a little girl. They couldn't have been kinder or more careful with all the kids. Maybe we shouldn't judge books by their covers. The post started getting shared, then shared again. By Sunday morning, it had been shared 300 times. By Monday, a local news station called Jake, asking for an interview. Jake wanted to say no. He didn't want attention. But Dex convinced him otherwise. "This is good for us," Dex said. "People see us as thugs and troublemakers. This shows them who we really are. Besides, you want Lily growing up in a town that respects the people who care about her, don't you?" So Jake agreed to the interview. He sat in front of a camera, feeling more nervous than he'd ever felt in his life, and told the story of finding Lily on the courthouse steps. He talked about how Rosa had welcomed him into their lives, and how the club had wanted to give Lily a special birthday. The interviewer asked him why he stopped that night, when so many others hadn't, Jake thought. About it for a long moment, 'cause she needed help, he said simply, and because I know what it's like to be scared and alone. When I was a kid, I was Lily. Someone helped me when they didn't have to. Changed my whole life. Maybe I was just paying that forward. The interview aired that Wednesday. By Thursday, the story had gone regional. By Friday, it was national news. The photo of Jake and Lily kept appearing, shared and reshared across the internet. Messages started pouring in. People sharing their own stories about being helped by strangers. About bikers who'd stopped to change their tires or helped them when they were stranded. About judging people by their appearance and being proven wrong. Jake's phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets wanted interviews. But more importantly, people in Millbrook started treating him differently. They smiled at him in the grocery store. They waved when he rode past. Parents didn't pull their kids away anymore, and the club started getting calls too. People asking if they'd be willing to help with charity events, to visit kids in hospitals, to participate in community fundraisers. What had started as one man stopping to help one lost little girl had somehow grown into something much bigger. And nobody, especially not Jake, could have predicted what would happen next. 3 months after Lily's birthday party, Jake walked into the clubhouse and found Dex and Tiny planning something at the big table. Papers were spread everywhere, and both men looked more focused than Jake had seen them in years. "What's all this?" Jake asked, grabbing a coffee. "Charity event," Dex said, not looking up. "We've had 12 different organizations reach out asking if we'd help with fundraisers. Churches, schools, the children's hospital 2 towns over. Everyone wants the Devil's Ridge Club involved now." "You're kidding." "Dope," Tiny said, pushing a stack of letters across the table. "Read them yourself. We're getting invited to everything. The Rotary Club wants us at their pancake breakfast. The elementary school asked if we'd escort kids for a bike safety day. Even the mayor's office called." Jake sat down heavily. The mayor's office. 6 months ago, the mayor had been quoted in the paper saying the motorcycle clubs in the area were a nuisance that needed to be dealt with. Now they were getting official calls from his office. "What did we tell them?" Jake asked. "That we'd think about it," Dex said. "But Jake, I think we should do some of this stuff. The hospital one especially. They want us to visit sick kids, bring them presents around Christmas. That seems like something we could handle." Jake thought about it. Thought about Lily and how happy that birthday party had made her. Thought about all those other kids who'd joined in, and their parents who'd seen his club in a completely different light. "Yeah," he said finally. "Yeah, let's do it." That's how the Devil's Ridge Motorcycle Club started their first annual Christmas toy drive. They put collection boxes in businesses all over Millbrook and the surrounding towns. Jake was shocked when the donations started rolling in. Toys, books, games, clothes. People were generous, especially when they knew it was going to kids who needed it most. The club spent a Saturday in early December sorting through everything in the clubhouse. They had enough toys to fill 3 pickup trucks. Rosa and Lily came to help, along with a dozen other volunteers from town. Lily, now 7.5, wore her leather jacket with pride and bossed the bikers around like she owned the place. "That teddy bear goes in the box for little kids," she instructed Tiny, who obediently put the bear where she pointed. "Yes, ma'am," he said seriously, and Jake had to smile. The day they delivered the toys to the children's hospital was one Jake would never forget. The club rode in formation, all 15 members, their bikes loaded with bags and boxes. When they walked into the pediatric ward, some of the younger kids looked scared at first. These were big, intimidating men in leather and chains. But Lily was with them, skipping down the hall in her little leather jacket, and somehow that made everything okay. If a little girl trusted these bikers, then they must be safe. They spent 4 hours at the hospital that day, visiting rooms, handing out toys, talking to kids who were facing things no child should have to face. Jake met a 10-year-old boy named Christopher, who was fighting cancer for the second time. The kid's head was bald from chemotherapy, but his eyes lit up when he saw Jake's leather vest covered in patches. "That's so cool," Christopher said. "Are you really in a motorcycle club?" "Sure am," Jake said, sitting down in the chair next to the hospital bed. "Been riding for 16 years. What's it like?" Jake spent the next 30 minutes telling Christopher about life on the road, about the freedom of riding, about the brotherhood of the club. The kid listened like Jake was telling him about another world, which in a way, he was. When it was time to leave, Christopher's mother walked Jake out into the hallway. She had tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly. "He hasn't smiled like that in weeks. This treatment has been so hard on him, and sometimes I think he's giving up hope. But you gave him something to look forward to. He's already talking about learning to ride a motorcycle when he beats this thing." Jake's throat felt tight. "When he beats it," he said firmly, "not if. When. And when he does, you tell him to come find me. I'll teach him myself." The woman hugged him, and Jake let her. "Aye." The same way he'd learned to let Rosa hug him all those months ago. The story of the toy drive made the news too. More positive coverage for the club. More people in Millbrook stopping to say thank you or shake their hands. The change in the town was remarkable, but the real test came in February. When Rosa got sick, she'd been feeling tired for weeks but kept brushing it off. She had 2 jobs and a granddaughter to raise. She didn't have time to be sick. But when she collapsed at work one evening, the doctors discovered she needed surgery. A problem with her gallbladder that couldn't wait. Jake got the call from the hospital on a Tuesday night. He was there in 20 minutes. Lily was in the waiting room with a neighbor who'd agreed to stay with her. When the little girl saw Jake, she ran to him and buried her face in his stomach, crying. "Is Grandma going to die?" she asked, her voice muffled by his shirt. "No," Jake said firmly, even though he didn't know for sure. "Your grandma's tough. She's going to be fine." The surgery went well, but Rosa needed 2 weeks to recover. 2 weeks she couldn't work. 2 weeks she'd lose pay from both jobs. 2 weeks she couldn't take care of Lily. Jake didn't even think about it. "Lily stays with me," he told Rosa the next day in her hospital room. "Don't argue. You focus on getting better. I've got her." "Jake, I can't ask you to do that," Rosa protested weakly. "You're not asking?" "I'm telling you." He softened his voice. "You took a chance on me when nobody else in this town would. Let me return the favor." So Lily moved into Jake's small house for 2 weeks. He drove her to school every morning and picked her up every afternoon. He helped with homework, made dinner, and learned how to braid hair through a lot of trial and error and several YouTube videos. His club brothers thought it was hilarious and stopped by constantly to help and give him. Grief in equal measure. The town watched this too. Watched Jake Morrison, the scary biker, dropping off a little girl at school every morning. Walking her into the building holding her hand, picking her up with a smile on his face. People started to understand that what they'd seen that day on the courthouse steps wasn't a one-time thing. This was who Jake really was. When Rosa came home from the hospital, she found her house spotlessly clean. Her fridge was full of food. Her bills for the month had been paid. The Devil's Ridge Club had taken up a collection, and every member had contributed. Some local businesses had donated too. Rosa cried when she found out. These men who the town had feared and judged had come together to help her family in their time of need. By spring, things had changed completely in Millbrook. The motorcycle club was a regular presence at community events. They helped with the town cleanup day. They escorted kids for the annual bike parade. They raised money for the fire department and the library. And Jake had become something he never expected to be. A regular fixture in Lily's life. He went to her school plays and parent-teacher conferences. He taught her how to ride a bike without training wheels. He was there for the good days and the hard days. The victories and the scraped knees. One Saturday afternoon in April, Jake and Lily were working on her bike in his driveway. She was learning how to fix a flat tire, her small hands trying to work the tools while Jake guided her. "Jake," Lily asked suddenly, Can I ask you something? Sure, kiddo. Why did you stop that day? When you found me on the courthouse steps. Everyone else just walked by. Jake set down the wrench he was holding. He'd thought about this question a lot over the past months. You know what, Lily? When I was about your age, maybe a little older, I got lost too. Different situation, but I was alone and scared. And someone stopped to help me. A stranger who didn't have to care, but did anyway. That person changed my whole life. Really? So when I saw you sitting there, I thought about that person and how they helped me. And I thought maybe I could be that person for you. Someone who stops when everyone else keeps walking. Lily thought about this for a moment, then hugged him tight, getting grease on both of them. I'm glad you stopped, she said. Kiddo. Me too. That evening, Jake rode through downtown Millbrook as the sun set. People waved at him from the sidewalk. Kids pointed at his motorcycle with excitement instead of fear. Store owners he'd never spoken to before nodded in greeting. He thought about that cold November evening when he'd found a crying little girl on courthouse steps. How he'd almost kept riding. How one decision, one moment of choosing to help, it changed everything. Changed Lily's life by giving her another person to count on. Changed Rosa's life by giving her support when she needed it most. Changed his club's reputation and opened doors for them to give back to their community. Changed the whole town's understanding of what it meant to judge someone by their appearance. But most of all, it had changed Jake himself. He'd spent 15 years being the tough guy, the outsider, the one people crossed the street to avoid. And he'd believed that's all he could ever be. Then a scared little girl with a teddy bear showed him he could be so much more. As Jake pulled into his driveway, his phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. Dinner tomorrow? Lily wants to make tacos and says you have to come. Jake smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. He looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt like he belonged. Like he was home. Like after years,